episode, I explore my curiosity with medicine. There are so many substances that can be called medicine. As you can imagine, people have all the things to say about medicine, as expressed on social media in the comments. To unpack my curiosity with medicine, I'm joined by Dr. Amy Gueye, an OBGYN who studied at Johns Hopkins University. What makes her the perfect person to chat with is that, in addition to her extensive medical training, Dr. Gueye has pursued further education in herbal and functional medicine. She understands the importance of a root cause-oriented approach to medical care. In this conversation, we talked about the definition of medicine, what specific substances are medicine, and what substances are poison, how our emotions play a part in physical manifestation of disease, and the key to identifying a healthcare provider. So let's get into my curiosity. What's Up with Medicine, featuring Dr. Amy Gueye. I'm so happy to have Dr. Gueye here for this episode of What's Up with Medicine. Dr. Gueye, I have been, particularly lately, really interested in how medicine is perceived as a people versus what medicine actually is or supposed to be. And so that's why I wanted you here. I want to have your opinion. I want to have your experience on what medicine is and what medicine is not. So actually, I'm going to open it up with a game. I'm just going to open it up. Okay. So the name of the game is Medicine or Poison. It's where I'm going to give you, in rapid fire fashion, a substance. And without explaining, without an in-depth answer right now, I just want you to say, when I present you with the substance, whether it's medicine or poison. Okay?
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Ginger ale.
Medicine.
Fentanyl.
Poison.
Chemotherapy.
Medicine.
Mushroom, the vegetable.
Medicine.
Mushroom, the hallucinogen.
Medicine.
Marijuana.
Medicine.
Positivity.
Medicine.
Laughter.
Medicine.
Robitussin.
Medicine.
Oh, interesting. Coca, the coca plant.
Cocoa, like CACAO?
Coca, the basis for cocaine.
Okay. I'm gonna go with poison.
Okay. Acupuncture.
Medicine.
Ozempic.
Medicine.
OxyContin.
Medicine.
And last one, God.
Medicine.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this is very interesting. So the first one out the gate was ginger ale, right? So growing up, anytime I had an upset stomach or really anything, okay, drink some ginger ale, girl, okay? And I don't know if it was actually medicine or like a placebo and psychologically, it sort of did its thing.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, how is ginger ale medicine?
So let me first start by saying that when I think of medicine and poison, it's not so much what is the substance capable of delivering, but what is it how are people using it, and is it helping us or hurting us? So I'm just going to say that first off the gate. That probably is going to clarify some of your confusion with some of my answers. But I think with ginger ale, so ginger is a known anti-inflammatory. We actually use it in holistic medicine for many different conditions, mainly for its anti-inflammatory properties. It also is a very strong anti-nausea medicine or herb. So ginger is actually helping you. Now, the the trip up with ginger ale is that there's some carbonation in there. And so, unfortunately, when you give someone something for nausea or for an upset stomach that works, and then you add some carbon in there, it can sometimes cause a little bit of an acid reflux or mess things up a little bit in your stomach. And so, for some people, it makes things worse. But then for others, you actually do feel better depending on how you react to it. But I think in the way it's used today, it is medicine.
Okay. So
Yeah,
if I'm hearing you correctly, ginger is very helpful
it
medicinally, but when
is.
you introduce carbonation, there could be some bodies that are more sensitive to others, right?
Exactly. Yep.
That doesn't
Yep.
really, allow for a medicinal reaction.
Exactly. Exactly.
Love that. Love that. So then, yes, give me your definition of poison then, since you gave me your definition of medicine.
Poison is any substance that is in its current use in that given society is hurting the population or the person using it more than it is helping. So you can imagine there will be some substances that are used in very helpful ways in certain groups, and then in other groups it's maybe abused or not properly understood. And in that setting, I would call it poison.
And so I think the only one that you said was poison is fentanyl.
Hmm.
Why is that?
Well, we use fentanyl currently in Western medicine for the purposes of anesthesia, and we also use it, of course, for pain. But really, it came into the market to help us provide enough pain relief so that we can get through procedures. It's not curing anything per se. It's just sort of like a band-aid, I guess, in order to bridge us to something else. And so fentanyl is one of those, for a good anesthesiologist, a very well respected drug. You want to use it very carefully. You do not want to, and we don't prescribe that for pain medicine when someone's in pain because, again, of it's not only short lived, but it can be very dangerous when just given or in the wrong hands. And so I think there are issues with fentanyl in the way that we're using it today. If you recall, there are some celebrities, and I'm not going to name any names,
Mm-hmm.
that have had
Mm-hmm.
issues with fentanyl and drugs in that class because, again, they were given access to something that it's not curing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, things didn't turn out very well.
So again, medicine is a substance that can cure, yes, heal. What about treat? Treat is always tricky for me because
Mhm.
when I went through the rapid fire chemotherapy, I was actually very, very surprised that you said
Mhm.
medicine. I have somebody very close to me that is going through chemotherapy right now.
Mhm.
And she does chemotherapy along with other medicines. So when I think about treatment versus curing or healing, I don't think of treatment as medicine. What are your thoughts there?
Mhm. So, I guess let's look at these words. So
Yes.
when we say cure, and this is obvious, we mean the reversal of disease. So this is something that was previously wrong that is no longer present in the body. When we use the word treatment, at least in the way that we use it in medicine, curing something is under that umbrella, but sometimes it isn't. So, for example, when we give someone a prescription for high blood pressure, unfortunately, we're not curing the high blood pressure, but we are treating it so that the patient no longer has these elevated readings when they check their blood pressure. So, treatment does encompass the ability to completely reverse something, or it could just be managing a condition as well. Chemotherapy does have many side effects because of, unfortunately, just the way that it works. It is designed to kill a cell that, for all intents and purposes, looks very much like the body cell. And so, of course, we're going to get some collateral damage. And so, some healthy cells are also going to, unfortunately, get damaged as well. And that's where a lot of the side effects of chemotherapy come from. I think, and this is something we can either go into or not,
Mhm.
and I see this a lot with my cancer patients, that the way in which we administer cancer treatment isn't always very holistic. So we're very focused, this is a patient who was just told they have a high chance of dying because they have a condition that no one wants to be diagnosed with because of all the fear and anxiety around it. And then we tell them you must do this medication and this treatment so that you can maybe live a little bit longer. It's all done in so much fear with no regard or consideration for the rest of this person holistically. So naturally, you've put someone in a state that is not therapeutic. They're scared, they're anxious, they're no longer even focused on living. They're just focusing on surviving so that they can get through this treatment. And then you give them a drug. And so I think in that setting, the chances of side effects and not doing well is very, very high. I have had patients put on chemotherapy drugs that have a high chance of, let's say, losing hair, and they've had zero hair loss because they approached the treatment very differently, very holistically, and were able to manage, all of the other parts of what I call, or the way that I think medicine should be delivered. And so they don't get some of those side effects. So in the way that I guess it's used in some people, you could see it as poison, but it could very well be therapeutic in medicine as well.
I love that perspective, right? So, the biggest reason why I wanted you, Dr. Gueye, to be here on this podcast, because there are a lot of doctors, a lot of them. I think that you have, when I read your bio, you have such a great scope of how the body can heal and can be cured. So, yes, you went to medical school, but you also have this holistic wellness approach as well. As a medically schooled doctor, how is it even possible that you would entertain holistic wellness?
Yeah, so that is an amazing question, and thank you for asking it. I started my career just like any other doctor in Western medicine. Western medicine is a very fragmented paradigm. We each sort of work in our little areas. You have the GI doctor and the cardiologist and the pulmonologist, and we don't talk to each other. We sort of each kind of take care of our little corner, and sometimes it causes issues with somebody else's corner, but that's not something we know anything about, we're not aware of. And that wasn't working for me. And I could see that I wasn't really helping patients. I was temporarily fixing one issue only to create a problem elsewhere. And so that led me into asking different questions, asking, am I really getting to the root cause of the issue at hand? And that introduced me to the world of functional medicine, which is a root cause oriented medicine. So that opened the doors to looking at different herbs and supplements and inflammation, and how does the disease in the GI system affect the issues that I'm seeing from a GYN standpoint. And that was great. I made lots of progress, headways. The patients were doing better. But I was still left with a group of patients who, no matter what we gave them, weren't doing better, or they were now in this new set of circumstances where they were almost dependent on a new set of things. Instead of prescriptions, now they were dependent on all of these herbs and a certain way of eating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which got very overwhelming. And being the person that I am, I started again asking different questions. I haven't figured out truly how to heal if now I'm just replacing A for B. And that's what led me to paying attention to the patients that had miraculous healings that I couldn't explain with all of the knowledge I had, and those who didn't. And those who did were always the ones who, for whatever reason, addressed their emotional and mind body. And that's where I realized that there must be some sort of life force that requires us to have balance in our emotional and mind body in order to truly create balance in our physical body. I'm not the kind of sort of holistic doctor who says medicine is trash, let's not look at that. No, I think the physical body needs to be looked at holistically. We need to see how all of the systems work together, and we need to chemically create balance in our patients. But we also have to realize that the emotional and mind body is a part of us. And when we get that balanced, that's when I see miracles that I can't explain with Western medicine.
Listen, okay. I don't know if you realize it, but you are preaching over here, okay? Like I am getting emotional. So I just want to give you a little anecdote because I really resonated with you talking about how the emotional healing was a big catalyst to these miraculous healings that you saw. I was at a really toxic workplace some years ago, near the end of my tenure at this particular place. I was being harassed at work, racially harassed at work. And I started developing hives. I had never had hives before in my life. And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, he was like, "You're so stressed. You feel so unsafe that you're developing hives." I'm like, my God. And I'm not even thinking that I'm stressed.
Yeah.
But something's going on, right? To where my body is like, we need to show you what's going on inside.
Yeah.
And so when I was let go from that job, eventually, all the hives went away. I was feeling better. I felt relieved.
Yeah.
So dealing with the emotional aspect where I had to literally be ripped from that place, I saw the effect immediately. And so when you talk about these miraculous healings, I know, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I really resonate with that.
Yeah.
What kind of work do you suggest your patients do to deal with the emotional healing?
Yeah. So it's interesting you said that you didn't realize that you were stressed. And what? Yeah, and you're not alone. We live in a society where we have become programmed to become so disconnected from ourselves, from our body, our emotions, that most of us are very deeply entrenched in stress, but even our definition of stress is off. It's not even accurate. And so the first thing that I take patients that are interested in this, I don't give this to everyone. It's usually patients will find me because they've heard that I do this kind of work, or I will offer pieces of it. But the very first step is to return to yourself, is to start to be comfortable with just being in your body and paying attention to where do you feel the pain and the tension and uncomfortable and what's going on, connecting with that in a loving way, not in a way that is, this sort of fight that we have created in Western medicine where we basically are in constant war with our bodies. And then also being comfortable with sitting with your emotions. We are always just suppressing them, flying away from them, distracting ourselves from them. And just first learning to reconnect with ourselves and listen, because the body and your emotions have something to say. And they are holding everything that you haven't released up until this point for the purposes of healing. Now, once you kind of awaken this connection, now that you're listening, you can start to make some headways in the miracles that you seek. Because in your body, and what I do with patients is I take you through, and I use the chakra paradigm, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that,
No.
but it's anchored in Asian medicine, where they basically have identified energy centers in our bodies that hold different emotions. And I found that they're pretty comprehensive. So I kind of work through those different energy centers in our bodies to identify those maladaptive emotions that are stuck in there and that are constantly coming out in various ways. They tell us that they're here through your triggers, through the issues in your life, your relationships. everything. And then, of course, your health and your body. And so by working through each one of those, you actually get to a state of such deep connection and heart opening that a lot of things just start to fall away. Things that doctors couldn't figure out or couldn't completely resolve. And I've seen, I want to say I've seen it all, but I'm sure I haven't. But I am always very pleased when something I couldn't explain with what I know, patients just call me and say, that headache that I was getting at 5 o'clock in the morning doesn't happen anymore. And I'm just like, I will take that. Let's run with it. I don't know why, but I know that the work that you have been doing with your insecurity or with your lack of self-worth or, with your fear of being seen has something to do with it.
So when you went to medical school, you wanted to help people in their journey to heal their physical body. Is that correct?
So I decided I wanted to go to become a doctor when I was 13. And it
Okay.
came from a moment where I watched a little boy in the streets of Senegal, of Dakar, very sick, covered in sort of scabs. I still don't know what until this day what was actually wrong with him. And I asked him if he was hungry. And he looked at me, he said, no, he needed a doctor. And I had a strong urge to wave a magic wand and to just miraculously heal him. And this is where sort of my journey towards medicine began. And so in my head, I said, I need to become a doctor. I need to become a physician, because if I know everything I need to know through medical school, I will be able to miraculously heal people. It turns out that's not what I learned through medical school. I've learned a lot, and I am helping women with that Western medicine knowledge, but I wasn't able to miraculously heal most people. So that's where this desire to really get to the root cause of issues and to really get women feeling well comes from. Not just better. I wanted women to tell me, I have never felt this good in my life. So that's kind of where that all came from.
Thank you for that. Your practice is women-centered, correct? And
It
you have a
is.
team of all women as well.
Yes.
Now, I know that you are medically trained to be an OBGYN, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Is there any other specialty you have, or do I have that specialty correct?
That is correct. I do have some additional training in public health. I got a functional medicine certificate and some herbal medicine training. I've worked with some doulas and some traditional medicine doctors in Africa, all in this journey to sort of crack the code of healing.
Okay, great. I wanted to bring that up because I love that you have an all-woman team. What's the intention behind that?
So, as you know, we are a gynecology clinic, so we serve women. And who else better to understand women than other women? I think historically we have taken the second seat in so many ways. And so we want to bring in that female energy to, women fixing women's issues back into the forefront, and it's working. I think most women feel more comfortable opening up to issues that are very personal to us with another woman.
So, with the foundation of wellness for you, root cause, what are some of the common causes of sickness and disease in the women that you see? The emotional root causes. What are some of the common ones?
So what's funny, and this is again why I use the chakra energy centers. So just to go back to the chakras, these energy centers have locations in our body, and there is a root energy center that kind of sits right in the pelvis, and then it kind of goes up from there. And the reason why I gravitated towards that was I found that a lot of the emotions that are held in that root energy center, I was seeing translating as GYN conditions. And these are emotions related to a lack of security, a lack of belonging, lack of safety, lack of self-worth, lack of self-love. all of these emotions are held in that root energy center. And of course, it can look at many different ways in every patient, but it would translate reliably to specific conditions. And, this is, I talk about this with someone like yourself because you're clearly open and connected, but I can't always have these conversations with my fellow medical colleagues because they look at me like, what do you mean the lack of self-worth led to her fibroids? Like, have you lost your marbles? And so I sometimes have to translate this differently with my patients as well. Not all patients are open to that kind of connection. But my goal, again, is to heal my patient. And I'm going to do that with a language that they understand. So I will find other ways, whether it's, most people accept that mental health is important. So I will find other ways to get that history, to get to that root cause. And I always find it. And then we work on it as a part of this general wellness. And they always come back and say, hey, I can't believe it, but since I have been doing better just mentally and emotionally with this, that's when I notice that my pain went away. That's when I notice that my periods are normal again. That's when I notice that, I don't have these symptoms anymore. And now they're ready to have that kind of conversation. And that's usually when we can go in a little deeper and do some more work.
I'm so glad you brought up fibroids. Very, very glad. Because in the Black community here in America, as you know, a good percentage of us, I know it's over 50%. You could give me the exact stat, but it's like 70, 80, maybe something like that. Of Black women have fibroids to some degree.
Yeah. So right now, and it depends who you ask, but 56% is kind of 56. The stats. Yeah.
Okay. So about 56% of Black women have fibroids. Which to me would be a really big clue that if this particular community is dealing with this physical manifestation, then there has to be some root causes to that, some emotional root causes, and especially communal root causes, because not every Black woman, is raised by the same two parents, So we're going through some sort of shared experience to where these fibroids are manifesting. It goes back to my story with the hives, right? If somebody, without asking me, what are you going through? What's happening in your life? They would just look at these hives and try to treat them, like topically treat them, superficially treat them, not really understanding she's dealing with something really emotionally heavy at work and it's manifesting in her body. So I love that. Again, you were open to going outside of your training in medical school to really figure out, okay, how can I truly heal people? So to your point about, okay, that's not what you learned in medical school, the healing part. What are people learning in medical school? What is the objective?
So again, I don't want to disparage medicine because when you are having a heart attack and you go into the emergency room, I promise you don't want to have a conversation about your emotions. You want drug pumped into your veins to open up those vessels. So medicine has its place, and it is a beautiful art that has come a long way. I think it just has lost its ways in some aspects of it. And that's part of I think my life mission is to take it to a new place because it is important. So, in medical school, we learn about the human body and what is happening chemically and physiologically that's causing the manifestation of a disease. And so our goal is to stop that chemical or physiological process. So if you look at it as sort of a spectrum, let's say, the emotion. So for you, for example, the stress that you were going through at work, and not just what was happening to you, but how you were internalizing what was happening to you is that root cause. And then along the lines from that, because our emotions actually trigger a chemical process in our body, there's data that shows that. There are neuroscientists who have also done research on that. And that chemical process is where Western medicine begins. That's where we start to look at things and say, okay, here is everything that's happening in her body. So let's give her a drug that's going to stop this so that the hives go away. And so you'll put the topical cream on there and it'll look a little bit better. And then next week you'll get another hive, and the week after, or it's a little bit better, but it doesn't go away because we are missing what is upstream. We haven't looked at the emotional triggers. Now, functional medicine, which is still part of sort of a new age wing of medicine, does go a little bit upstream. So instead of starting with the chemical process, they'll start to ask questions around what were some of the inflammatory triggers, which is great. But not all functional medicine doctors will have a conversation around, they won't ask you, well, what was going on with you emotionally when you noticed this? And that's where we're missing a lot of sort of opportunities in Western medicine.
I was talking to a good family friend of mine that I invited onto the podcast because she's an amazing psychologist, family therapist. And I had her on to talk about emotions because I wanted to know the difference between emotions and feelings. And so what I learned from her is that emotions, which you're talking about, are sensations in the body. And so when you talk about how emotions, like for example, if I see a plate of food that is just terrible to my eyes, I might feel maybe a need to throw up, right? Like this throat is like, about to throw up, or I might have butterflies in my stomach. All those sensations are emotions, and they are, when they get to a certain level, they can manifest physically, right? So I love that you talked about that. I also want to touch on, you talked about Western medicine. I always hear Western medicine, Eastern medicine. Are those the only two types of schools of medicine there are?
Oh, no.
Okay.
So, of course, and I'm sure you know what Western medicine is. Eastern medicine just refers to mainly when we say Eastern medicine, we're talking about Chinese medicine and Indian medicine, so Ayurvedic medicine. But there's African medicine that unfortunately gets sort of omitted in history altogether, but is at the root of a lot of Eastern medicine practices and a lot of Western medicine. So, Western medicine was actually born from a mixture of some of the work from Imhotep, which was in Egypt, and these were African, sort of Black African leaders. So it was a Black society, even though we're not here to talk about whether Egypt was Black or white, but we have evidence that it was. And a mixture of the Babylonian work as well. So that did influence what eventually became Western medicine. But Western medicine has its history, and it kind of progressed through different stages. So it lost a lot of its spirituality and religious affiliations and eventually became solely scientifically focused. But there is, South American societies also have their own rituals and medicine, all of which tap into areas that Western medicine can't even begin to fathom or even understand.
Tea. I want to talk about tea. What's your experience with tea?
It is absolutely magical. So I would, and when I use the word tea, I would actually put a lot of the different traditional herbs in that category.
Herbs.
Nature has provided us with so much. And I think in nature, we could probably find a cure to every single human disease. Unfortunately, with the European invasion and colonization, et cetera, there's been a lot of suppression of traditional herbs and therapies. But herbs, because they are a part of nature and we are a part of nature, do have the capacity in many instances to reverse illness without causing the damage that some of our synthetic drugs create. So you can have really nice shifts with teas and different herbal therapies. Of course, they need to be respected. Unfortunately, they're not FDA regulated, so they sort of flood the market, and people rely on TikTok on what to take and how to take it. But they are can be just as potent as a prescription drug, and so it can really be helpful in the right hands and with someone who knows what they're doing.
Okay. Marijuana. I want to go there. Marijuana has been also, oh my gosh, that's also what this person close to me does. Okay. So she
Mm,
does chemotherapy, she
mhm.
does tea, she does marijuana, which I was very surprised by the way. Uh, Getting back to herself, family time. Okay. She's really trying a holistic approach, which I love. Then
Mm,
my grandmother in law, she takes gummies for her pain to manage her back pain.
okay.
Marijuana, I think, is pretty phenomenal as well. What's your experience with that and with your patients?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we recognize the medicinal values of marijuana, even in Western medicine.
Hmm.
I think the trouble just has been with its recreational use and the abuse. And so, of course, there's stigma surrounded, that comes with marijuana. But we know that THC has medicinal purpose and value, and we use it all the time for pain or for nausea or patients that are undergoing chemotherapy. Um, we now know also in smaller doses it could help with certain mood disorders and conditions. So it does. We recognize in Western medicine that THC has medicinal value.
So, what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, okay? What I'm hearing from you is that mm, if a person has a healthy emotional well being, then it is very unlikely throughout their lifetime to develop any disease. Is that what I'm
Mm,
hearing?
no, and
Okay.
this is great. I am you're very insightful, and I thank you for that. Because, and this is a common question that I get, or sort of not as a question, but as a, well, if you're correct, then all the
Mhm.
happy people that I know shouldn't be sick. And some of the happiest people I know have cancer. Here's the difference. You can right now, just like right now, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you seem like you're in a very good emotional state. You seem very balanced,
I
your
am
mood is
right
good.
now.
Yeah, and we're having a great conversation. But that doesn't mean that there are certain emotions that are trapped, that, or it doesn't mean that you don't have trapped emotions from prior experiences that you haven't processed. We are great bypassers. As just in American society and as humans in general, we are really good at burying something that has happened to us, not dealing with it, and then moving on and pretending like all is well because that's what our lives require of us. But then they come up. They will come up in various ways. I have a process called trigger journaling that I take my patients through. And it's whenever you're triggered throughout the day, and everybody gets triggered, most people, most of us get triggered by
Mhm.
something or another. That is a sign that there is something that is asking to be balanced within you. So it's rare to come across in this day and age, just given our human history, someone who has absolutely no imbalances. And that's why disease is still rampant, whether it's severe or minor. It could just be that you have a headache now and then, or
Mhm.
chronic back pain, or whatever it is. We all carry something, myself included. I'm taking myself through the same journeys and courses and meditations and all of that that I take my patients through because I'm human. I've gone through some of the same exposures and issues, et cetera, and I'm trying to shift and rebalance our humanity. So it's not that you're emotionally stable and therefore you're going to be well. It's how balanced are you in all of your different energy centers? Have you processed everything that has happened to you? What are you still holding on to in your body?
And that journey is going to be a forever journey because, to your point, right? The dis-ease, as corny as that sounds, but it makes a lot of sense, you know? The dis-ease um, could be as minor as you said as a headache, right? You could be going through, you could be a mother and your 3-year-old comes in your room and they start yelling, Mom, get up, it's time to get, and literally you're like, my God, right? Or it could be something a little bigger, like maybe a woman had trauma with losing a child. I know somebody who that happened to, and that could manifest into something, yeah,
So
go ahead, sorry.
my take on that is that it will not someday, it will not be a forever journey. There will be a future
Mm,
human society, hopefully in my lifetime, that will understand the purpose of experience and events and how to process them so that they never linger and become disease. The loss of a child, everything that happens to us has a gift. And we have not been programmed to find the gifts in the bad things that happen to us. We just call them bad and unfortunate and don't process them properly. I think we are going to get to a point as a human civilization where we are going to learn how to properly have a relationship with our feelings, with our emotions, with the things that happen to us, and we will not continue to create disease after disease.
that's beautiful. Another sort of revelation I had when you were speaking, and tell me if I'm wrong, is um hmm, most traditional Western medicine can be used when there's an urgent need. Okay.
Mhm.
When there's sort of a need to get rid of this thing, or to get, in front of this thing before it grows, whatever that is. It could be something
Right.
as minor as BV, you know what I mean? Versus cancer,
Mhm.
Um, that's what I'm hearing. Whereas um more of the root based, holistic approach wellness is something that you can sort of, I guess, take your time with. Is that a fair assessment of those
Yeah.
two?
Yeah, I think so. Especially at this point of our conversation in time, because we do have to relearn, like I said, how to be human is what I call it. And that takes time. When we've been indoctrinated for so long to look at the world a certain way, to have a certain relationship with our bodies, our thoughts, and our emotions, it's going to take time to unlearn those things and to learn something new. But again, eventually, I hope that there will be a generation of children that will be raised to know how to deal with the things that happen to them and their emotions so that it doesn't take 6 months or 8 months or whatever it is
Right.
that, my journey program course takes. But again, if you remember for Western medicine, that we are good at observing chemical processes and fixing them. That's why Western medicine is good at stopping or aborting a process in its tracks. But if you continue to pour water in a cup,
Mm.
it will, just continue to come or maybe manifest in another way. Now that you've closed, you put a dam here, what's going to happen elsewhere with the system? So I think, yes, at this point in time, you can look at it that way, that getting to those
Okay.
emotional root causes does take a little bit more time, but it is time very, very worth spending because it will prevent issues down the road. It's going to create such an elevated sense of well being, fulfillment. It not only fixes your health, but you start to find that your finances, your relationships, everything just starts to auto correct as well. So it is absolutely worth taking that journey.
Is doing nothing a possible medicine?
Sometimes doing nothing is the best thing to do. Um, and what I think of is the body has an built-in intelligence. It knows what needs to happen to heal. And sometimes we just have to
Mm.
stay out of the way and let it run its course. If you get a cold and you didn't have access to CVS, I promise you the cold will resolve. And how does it resolve? Because your body knows how to take care of that virus. And so sometimes doing nothing is absolutely the way to go. You can always assist that process with just having a very positive mindset and outlook and trust that your body knows what to do.
Oh, that's good. It kind of takes me back to my early years of my period. So I'm
Mm.
40 years old now. And so
Oh,
when I was like
40.
in my early 20s, well, that's very sweet. Well, when I was in my early 20s, even early 30s, I used to have really, really bad cramps. Heavy, 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 heavy bleeding too. Good Lord.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, I just did not want to take medicine. I don't know what that was about. Probably because my mother didn't. I think that's probably why. So I would just suffer. I would just suffer through it. Maybe I
Mhm.
had this idea that if I took medicine, then my body couldn't really work the way that it needed to or something. I always
Mhm.
got through it,
Yeah.
Clearly I'm still here. However, as I approached, actually right after my 40th birthday, I said, you know what? I don't want these cramps anymore. I'm going to see if I cut out meat, a little bit,
Mm.
whether that's going to sort of help.
Yeah.
Um, and it did. I went
Mhm.
from a 7-day period, heavy bleeding, clots, and everything. If I'm giving you the symptoms, you also know what that means as well. Okay, I'm
Yes.
not going to reveal it, but you know what else is going on there. Okay,
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so I went from 7 days of heavy bleeding, um, clots, and everything, to now 4 days,
Mhm.
minimal clots,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh my God, and I do think, at least for my body, my age, whatever's going on with me right now,
Mhm.
doing meat twice a week is
Mhm.
medicine for me because it's
Mhm.
actually helping other things,
Mhm.
other
Of
other
course.
things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so food, what's your experience with
Yes.
food as
Oh,
medicine?
food is the biggest medicine.
Mhm.
It's and just I guess for your listeners, because you figured it out, but this is a great example of where listening to your body comes into play. So when you're having those cramps, your body is trying to tell you that something's out of balance. It wants
Mm.
to pay attention, and so it's good that you trusted your body. You had this sort of knowing that my body probably knows what it's doing, which is amazing, especially that young. But it's also trying to tell you something's off, something's out of balance, and it was, hey, can let's look at our diet, let's look at our nutrition, and see where there's maybe too many inflammatory foods, and red meat happens to be one of them. And so you can always kind of get yourself in the right track by just asking that simple question. And I take my patients through a simple meditation where you just sit and you just listen. You sit with the cramps,
Mm.
you sit with the pain, and you connect. And I know not everyone listening is intuitive or kind of even believes in any of this stuff, but I promise you, you'll start to get sort of, it's almost like a knowing, like your body does speak to you, and you'll maybe have this idea, every time I drink that dairy, that milk, I always don't feel good. Let me try to stop to cut that milk out. And I can't tell you how many patients have said that. And it's usually, those patients who said, this is not going to work, Dr. Gueye. I'm going to do this fine because you told me about it. Nothing's going to happen. And they'll come back and they said, that thought just came to me and I tried it and now my cramps are
Mm.
gone, because you are connected. Your body is speaking to you and it's
Dr.
asking
Gay,
for
I
rebalance.
have to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. This is the first time I'm interrupting you. You are speaking my language because I know dairy messes me up. My
Mhm.
husband, po thing, because I be lighting the room up. Okay, after some ice cream, he already know what's going down. Okay, like it is happening. God bless him. But you also validate. Oh my God, you're the first person to ever say this, and I'm like about to get emotional. There will be sometimes when my body's like, you need steak, you need broccoli, you need, and I'm like, what? And I will listen to it, and maybe
Mhm.
there's some iron I need, maybe there's some folate I need. And the,
Yeah.
the fact that you just know, I have never had anybody validate that. Well, my mom is similar, but y'all two are the only ones. So I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No
You are preaching
worries.
to the choir here. Preaching to the
That's
choir.
amazing. That shows how connected you do have some level of connection, if not a very strong connection to your own body, which is great. You're ahead of many, many women out there, and we need to return to that instead of fighting with it. Instead of looking at our pain as, oh my goodness, why is it here? I hate this. I hate my uterus. It should instead be, what would you like me to know? Just listen.
For the patients that come to you, I assume that They're looking for um, someone to trust with their wellness.
Hmm.
Not only are you very affable, very pleasant, very beautiful,
Thank you.
um, very knowledgeable, and very just warm. They're looking for answers, and they're looking for answers outside of traditional Western medicine.
Mhm.
Normally, I would think. But
Yeah.
are there some patients who are resistant to your expertise?
I think there are some patients who are resistant to all of the holistic things that we're talking about. We do
Interesting.
fill a gap in the field of GYN because I address hormone imbalances and PCOS and endometriosis and fibroids. And unfortunately, there aren't many providers that specialize in any of those more complex women's health issues. So I do attract a lot of those either self referred or referred by some of my colleagues. And sometimes they don't want to have a conversation about their emotions, and that's okay. I think part of the
Mm.
therapeutic delivery of healthcare has to be a full acceptance and providing a loving space for our patients and meeting them exactly where they are. If I start this battle, well, you're wrong, and you just don't understand that these emotions are that's not going to help them because they're not ready to hear that. They're going to be in resistance, and that resistance is going to create more problems. But there is a way to speak to everyone and have a conversation about emotions without having a conversation about emotions. I think
Mm.
a good doctor has to have a relationship, a true relationship with their patient. Because if I don't know you, if I don't know what matters to you, if I don't know what you do and how many kids you have and where you live and what do you spend your time doing? What do you love? What do you not, what don't you love? I can't truly take care of you. And that's why we used to do house calls, many, many years ago as physicians, because
Oh.
we needed to know our patients.
Mm.
We don't have that privilege anymore. So all I have is my connection and my conversation. And in that connection, I can still provide that therapeutic value of, can you also just meditate for me in the morning just so we can calm your nerves without ever saying, hey, I think that the way you wake up in the morning anxious is probably causing your blood pressures to be high. I don't need to say that. But I
Mm.
can say, I want you to be a little bit more relaxed in the morning, and that's going to help us get you better. And here's what I want you to do. So, as the provider, I think it's our job to meet patients where they are and to provide a safe space for everyone, regardless of what you believe or don't believe. We can still provide value and meet all of these needs just by using language that they can understand.
And language indeed is important because I just got a revelation. Okay. You just called yourself a provider, which I've called you, you are, fellow doctors that as well. But now I'm like, what is she providing? What are they providing? You know what I mean? What does that mean? So, based on our conversation, you are providing options, in my opinion, options to healing, to treatment, to cures. You're really providing medicine. And so,
Mhm.
I just want to offer to my listeners, all of us are on this health journey. We're all on this journey. Let's just be very mindful of the kinds of medical providers, wellness providers that are providing for us.
Yeah.
So 2 last questions for you. What would you like to add, Dr. Gueye?
To this conversation,
Yes.
I would like to say that it is I guess, two things. One, it is my advice to all women listening or to anyone listening, no matter your gender or age, that you should seek a healthcare provider that cares about you as a whole person and not just is going to give you, a couple of band-aids here and there. So date your providers, date your doctors, date whoever until you find that true connection, because that is where you're going to get the most help. And the second thing is that I hope that we can take Western medicine to a place where it comes out of its little fragmented boxes and into one that looks at the entire person.
Lastly, where can the people find you, Dr. Gueye? Let's give them your website, which will be in the show notes, your website and your social media.
So I have two websites. The medical website is visionarywomenshealth.com. I also have drholda.com. That's drholda.com. And that website is mainly for those who already know that they want to take this journey to look at their emotional and mind bodies. And so I have programs just for them, but we also provide some of that through Visionary Women's Health as well. My Instagram is Dr. Holda is the handle. So that's pretty easy to find. Those are the best ways to reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gueye, for joining me. It has been such a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you for doing this, for being who you are. I can feel your energy and your radiance.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our guests for joining me, and thank you for listening. This episode was edited by Chase Parker, hosted and executive produced by me, Jennifer Brown, produced by Latrice Lauve, and distributed by Black Owned Productions. I hope you'll join me again on another episode. The Curiosity Podcast is a safe space to not only explore my curiosity of all the things, but yours as well. And together, we get to dig a little deeper as to why that curiosity exists in the first place.